The broker's fingers stopped moving on his keyboard. He stared at his screen for a long moment, then typed something else. Then he picked up his phone and dialed a number, speaking quietly to someone on the other end while his eyes never left the monitor. I sat there in the leather chair across from his desk, holding my grandfather's old stock certificate in my hands, the same certificate my father had ripped from my hands 3 months ago at Christmas dinner, the same certificate everyone had called worthless, the same certificate I had almost thrown away because what good is a piece of paper from a company that went bankrupt 30 years ago? The broker hung up the phone and immediately dialed another number. Then another. I watched him make 4 calls in 10 minutes, each conversation more urgent than the last. I caught fragments. Corporate Actions Database. Acquisition History from 1992. Verify the conversion ratio. I need a supervisor. Is something wrong? I asked. He held up a finger, asking me to wait, and kept talking into the phone. When he finally hung up, he sat back in his chair and rubbed his face with both hands. He looked like a man who had just seen something impossible. "Mr. Shaw," he said, his voice strange and careful. "How long has your family owned this stock certificate?" "Since 1983. My grandfather bought it. And in all that time, no one ever checked on it? No one ever contacted you about the shares?" There was nothing to check on. The company went bankrupt in 1992. My father said so. Everyone said so. My grandfather lost everything. The broker shook his head slowly. "Mr. Shaw, Pacific Digital Technologies did not go bankrupt in 1992. What? It was acquired. Bought by another company called Integrated Circuits Incorporated. The acquisition was completed in November 1992. Your grandfather's shares were converted into ICI stock at a ratio of 1:3. I do not understand. Your grandfather did not lose his investment. He just did not know it was still there." The broker turned his monitor so I could see it. "Let me show you what happened. Pacific Digital was acquired by ICI in 1992. Then ICI was acquired by Valley Semiconductor in 1998. Then Valley Semiconductor was acquired in 2005 by a company you may have heard of." He pointed to a name on the screen. NVIDIA Corporation. Your grandfather's 500 shares of Pacific Digital Technologies, after all the conversions and stock splits over 40 years, are now approximately 47,000 shares of NVIDIA. The room tilted. I grabbed the arm of my chair. "That is not possible," I heard myself say. "NVIDIA? The graphics card company? The AI company? The same. And at the current market price of approximately $112 per share, your grandfather's investment is worth." He paused, checking his screen. "Approximately $5,264,000. I could not breathe. I could not think. I just sat there, staring at the stock certificate in my hands, the yellowed paper with its ornate border and fancy lettering, the certificate that everyone had told me was worthless. "He thought he lost everything," I said, more to myself than to the broker. "For 30 years, he thought he lost everything. The acquisition notices would have been sent to his address of record in 1992. But if he had already written off the investment, if he believed the company was bankrupt, he might have thrown them away without reading them, or moved and never updated his address. It happens more often than you would think." I looked at the certificate again. 500 shares of Pacific Digital Technologies. Purchased April 15, 1983. My grandfather's name in elegant script. Arthur Raymond Shaw. "He never knew," I whispered. "He died thinking he had nothing to leave me. I should have seen it coming. 12 years of signs, all pointing to this exact moment." My grandfather, Arthur Raymond Shaw, was born in 1940 in a small town in Ohio. His father was a factory worker, his mother a schoolteacher. They were not poor, but they were not wealthy either. They were the kind of people who believed in hard work and education and saving for the future. Arthur was fascinated by technology from an early age. He built his first radio from a kit when he was 12. He took apart every appliance in the house to see how it worked, much to his mother's frustration. When he graduated high school in 1958, he knew exactly what he wanted to do: work with electronics. He got a job at Motorola in Phoenix right out of technical school, in 1962. It was supposed to be an entry-level position, a stepping stone to something better. But he fell in love with the work, the precision of it, the constant innovation, the sense that he was part of something revolutionary. He worked at Motorola for 34 years, rising from technician to senior engineer. He was there when they developed the first commercial handheld mobile phone. He was there when the semiconductor industry exploded. He watched technology transform from room-sized computers to devices that fit in your pocket. And he believed long before most people that personal computers would change the world. Mark my words, he would say at family dinners in the early 80s. Every home in America will have a computer someday. Every business, every school. This is going to be bigger than television. Bigger than anything. My father thought he was crazy. My uncle thought he was delusional. But Arthur kept reading, kept learning, kept investing small amounts in companies he believed in. In 1983, he heard about a small startup in Silicon Valley called Pacific Digital Technologies. They were making components for personal computers, specialized chips that made the machines faster and more powerful. Arthur researched the company for months. He drove to California to visit their offices. He talked to their engineers. And then he invested $4,000, which was a significant amount of money for a man with a mortgage and 2 kids, in 500 shares of Pacific Digital Technologies. This is the future, he told my grandmother Ellen. These people understand where technology is going. This investment is going to pay for the boys' college. Maybe more. For 9 years he watched the stock climb. Not dramatically, but steadily. He kept every quarterly report, every shareholder letter, every piece of communication from the company. He believed. And then, in 1992, the letters stopped coming. He called the company. The number was disconnected. He searched the newspapers for information. He found a small article in a business publication that mentioned Pacific Digital Technologies had ceased operations. He assumed the worst. He assumed bankruptcy. He assumed his $4,000 was gone forever. He never told anyone how much it hurt. He just quietly put the stock certificate in a drawer and tried to forget about it. For 30 years, that certificate sat there, a reminder of a dream that did not come true. Except the dream did come true. He just did not know it. He met my grandmother Ellen at a church social in 1965. She was a nurse at the local hospital, practical and kind, the kind of woman who could handle anything life threw at her. They married a year later, bought a small house in Tempe, and started the family that would eventually look down on them. They had 2 sons, my father Lawrence and my uncle Gregory. Both of them grew up embarrassed by their parents' modest lifestyle. Lawrence became an accountant, married my mother Diane, and moved to a bigger house in Scottsdale. Gregory became a real estate developer, made a lot of money in the boom years, and moved to California to get as far away from Phoenix as possible. Neither of them ever understood their father. They saw him as a dreamer, a man who wasted money on foolish investments and spent too much time reading about technology instead of doing something practical. They tolerated him at holidays but rarely visited otherwise. And then there was me, Duncan Patrick Shaw, Lawrence's youngest son, the one who became a plumber instead of an accountant, who worked with his hands instead of numbers, who lived in a modest house in Mesa and never seemed to understand that the whole point of being a Shaw was to do better than your parents. I was the only one who visited Grandpa Arthur. It started when I was 23, right after I finished my apprenticeship and got my first real job. My grandmother had died the year before, and I remembered my father mentioning, almost dismissively, that someone should probably check on the old man. So I drove to his house one Sunday afternoon. I found him in his garage, surrounded by old computers and electronic equipment, tinkering with something that looked like it came from a science fiction movie. "Duncan," he said, looking up with surprise and delight. "You came to see me. I thought I would check in, see what you are working on." "This," he held up a circuit board covered in components. "This is a project I have been working on for months, trying to build a media server from spare parts. Probably will not work, but that is not the point. The point is to understand how it all fits together." We spent 4 hours in that garage. He showed me his collection of vintage computers, machines that had been cutting-edge technology when I was born. He explained how processors worked, how memory stored information, how the internet was transforming everything. His eyes lit up when he talked about technology, the same way they must have lit up in 1983 when he believed Pacific Digital Technologies would change the world. "Why do you keep all this old stuff?" I asked, gesturing at the shelves of obsolete equipment. "Because it is history. Every one of these machines was someone's dream. Someone believed in it enough to build it, to invest in it, to bet their future on it." He paused. "Some dreams work out, some do not, but they are all worth remembering." I thought about that conversation often over the next 12 years. Every Sunday, without fail, I drove to Grandpa Arthur's house and spent the afternoon with him. We would sit in his garage or his living room, surrounded by technology old and new, and he would teach me things no one else in my family cared about. We had rituals, Grandpa Arthur and I. I would bring pastries from the bakery on Mill Avenue, the same bakery that had been there since he moved to Tempe in the 60s. He would make coffee in an ancient percolator that he had repaired a dozen times over the years, the kind that takes forever to brew but produces something rich and strong and perfect. We would sit amid his collection of computers and gadgets, and he would explain how each one worked, why it mattered, what it represented. "This is an Apple II," he said once, pulling a beige machine from a shelf. When this came out in 1977, people thought Steve Jobs was crazy. They said no one would ever want a computer in their home. Now look around you. Computers are everywhere. Did you own one when it came out? I could not afford one then, but I bought one later used just to understand how it worked. I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. He ran his hand over the dusty keys. "It changed everything, Duncan. This little machine changed the world. And hardly anyone remembers." He told me about the early days of computing, when a computer was a room-sized machine that could do less than the phone in my pocket. He told me about Motorola, about the engineers he had worked with, about the innovations they had created. He told me about working on the first mobile phone prototypes, about the skepticism from management, about the belief that regular people would never need to make calls from anywhere but their homes. "We were wrong about so many things," he said once, "but we were right about the big picture. Technology was going to transform human life. Communication, entertainment, work, everything. I knew it in my bones. I just did not know exactly how it would happen." He told me about the investments he had made over the years, some successful, some not. He had bought stock in companies I had never heard of, companies that had either become household names or vanished into obscurity. He did not dwell on the losses. He accepted them as the price of believing in the future. And sometimes, when the mood was right, he would tell me about Pacific Digital Technologies. "I believed in that company," he said once, about 5 years before he died. We were sitting in his garage, the Arizona heat kept at bay by a struggling window unit. I really believed. I thought I had found something special, something that would grow and change and become part of the future. "What made you believe in them?" "I went to visit them in California, took 3 days off work and drove out there. Their engineers showed me what they were building. Components that would make computers faster, more powerful, more accessible. I could see it, Duncan. I could see where it was going." He shook his head. $4,000. That was a lot of money in 1983. "Your grandmother thought I had lost my mind." "What happened to the company?" "Went under, I think. In 92, the letters stopped coming. The phone was disconnected. I assumed bankruptcy." He paused. "I never had the heart to actually confirm it. I just stopped looking. It hurt too much." "Do you still have the certificate?" "Somewhere. In a drawer, probably. I keep it as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That sometimes you can believe in something with all your heart and still be wrong. That the future does not always go where you think it will." He looked at me with those wise, tired eyes. "But also that you have to try. You have to believe in something. Otherwise, what is the point?" I never forgot that conversation. And I never forgot the sadness in his voice when he talked about the investment he thought he had lost. My father could not understand why I kept visiting. "What do you two even talk about?" he asked me once, at a family dinner where Grandpa Arthur had not been invited. His old computers? His failed investments? We talk about technology, about history, about life. He is living in the past, Duncan. He still thinks personal computers are revolutionary. He does not understand that the world has moved on. He understood technology before anyone else in this family. He understood how to lose money, that Pacific digital investment he is so proud of, for $1,000 down the drain. And he still keeps the certificate, like it means something. My father shook his head. The old man never learned when to cut his losses. Maybe he just believed in something. Belief does not pay the bills. Belief does not make up for bad judgment. He should have sold that stock the moment things started looking bad. Instead, he held on until there was nothing left. I did not argue with him. There was no point. My father had made up his mind about Grandpa Arthur decades ago, and nothing I said was going to change it. But I kept visiting. Every Sunday for 12 years. I got married when I was 27. Her name is Melissa, and she is the best thing that ever happened to me. She grew up in a family of tradespeople, her father a carpenter, her mother a seamstress. She understood the value of working with your hands and never once made me feel like I should have chosen a different career. I brought her to meet Grandpa Arthur about 2 months after we started dating. He was 79 then, moving a little slower, but still sharp as ever. "This is the one," he said, after she had gone to look at his collection of vintage calculators. "This is the girl you are going to marry." "How do you know?" "Because she asks questions. Real questions. Not polite questions, but questions that show she actually wants to understand." He smiled. "That is rare, Duncan. Most people do not really want to understand things. They just want to feel like they do. Hold on to her." I held on to her. We got married a year later, in a small ceremony at a garden venue outside Phoenix. Grandpa Arthur was there, 80 years old but beaming with pride. 3 years later, Melissa was pregnant. And when our son Nathan was born, I brought him to meet his great-grandfather when he was just 2 weeks old. Grandpa Arthur held Nathan in those weathered hands, the hands that had built circuits and assembled computers and believed in the future, and he wept. "A new generation," he said. "A new Shaw. The world he grows up in will be so different from the one I knew. I wish I could see it." "You will see some of it. Maybe, maybe not. But you will. And you will tell him about me, will you not? About the old man who believed in technology before it was cool. I will tell him everything." The Christmas dinner was 3 months before he died. We gathered at my parents' house in Scottsdale, the same house where Lawrence and Diane had hosted holiday dinners for 20 years. It was the kind of house that was designed to impress. High ceilings, designer furniture, a kitchen that had been renovated twice in the past decade even though my mother barely cooked. Everything was tasteful and expensive and somehow completely empty of warmth. My brother Kevin was there with his wife and children. Uncle Gregory had flown in from California, making time in his busy schedule to spend the holidays with family he barely knew anymore. The house was decorated with expensive ornaments and professionally designed arrangements. Wreaths on every door and a tree that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. I remember walking in with Melissa and Nathan, feeling immediately out of place. My work boots on the marble entryway. My modest clothes among the designer labels. Melissa holding Nathan's hand, trying to keep him from touching the fragile decorations that were everywhere. "Duncan," my mother said, greeting us with the kind of hug that was more performance than affection. "So glad you could make it. And little Nathan, how big you are getting." Nathan hid behind Melissa's legs. He was 3 years old, and he had already learned that this house was not a place where children were allowed to be children. Grandpa Arthur was there too, though my father had initially suggested he might be more comfortable staying home. I had insisted. It was Christmas. He should be with family, even if the family did not particularly want him there. He looked frielier than I had seen him, 84 years old, and the years were finally catching up. He tired easily, forgot things sometimes, repeated himself. The other family members talked to him the way you talk to a child, loud and slow and with exaggerated patience, as if his age had somehow diminished his intelligence. But his eyes were still sharp when he looked at me. still full of that quiet wisdom I had come to depend on over the past 12 years. Still seeing the world the way he always had, with curiosity and wonder and belief in what was possible. "Duncan," he said when I went to sit beside him on the couch, "how is the plumbing business?" "Good, Grandpa. Busy. People always need pipes fixed. Honest work. Important work. The world needs people who can fix things." He patted my hand. "You remind me of the engineers I used to work with at Motorola. Practical people. People who solve problems instead of just talking about them." We sat together through dinner, largely ignored by the rest of the family. My father held court at the head of the table, talking about his business, his golf game, his plans for retirement. My mother interjected occasionally with news about her social calendar, her charity work, her plans to redecorate the guest bedroom. Kevin and his wife discussed their children's private school accomplishments. Gregory talked about real estate deals in California, about markets and margins and money. No one asked Grandpa Arthur about his life. No one asked me about mine. We were there, but we were not part of the conversation. After dinner, while everyone was scattered around the living room drinking coffee and making small talk, he pulled me aside. "Duncan," he said quietly, "I need to give you something." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out an envelope. It was old, yellowed, the paper soft with age. I could feel something stiff inside, something that crinkled when he pressed it into my hands. "What is this?" "Something I have been holding onto for 40 years. I want you to have it." I opened the envelope. Inside was a stock certificate. Pacific Digital Technologies. 500 shares. Dated April 15, 1983. The paper was yellowed and fragile. The printing faded but still legible. The ornate border that was common on stock certificates in that era giving it an almost antique appearance. "Grandpa, I cannot take this. This is your investment." "It is not worth anything, Duncan. The company went under 30 years ago. But I want you to have it anyway." His eyes were glistening, catching the light from the Christmas tree behind us. "It represents something. A dream. A belief in the future. I know it did not work out, but I want you to have it. To remember that your grandfather believed in something, even if he was wrong." Before I could respond, my father appeared at my elbow. "What is that?" Lawrence asked, reaching for the envelope. "What did he give you?" "It is nothing, Dad. Just an old certificate." But my father was faster than me. He grabbed the envelope out of my hands and pulled out the stock certificate. "Pacific Digital Technologies?" He started to laugh. The sound was harsh, mocking, filling the elegant living room. "Dad, are you serious? You are giving Duncan your worthless stock certificate." "Lawrence," my mother said quietly, "no, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect." He waved the certificate in the air. "Everyone, look at this. Dad is giving Duncan his Pacific Digital stock. The investment that went bankrupt in '92. The $4,000 he threw away on a dream. That company went under," Uncle Gregory said, shaking his head. "I remember when it happened. Dad was devastated." "He should have sold when he had the chance," Kevin added. "Cut his losses. That is basic investing." "Give it back," I said. "I am doing you a favor, Duncan. This is worthless paper. The company does not even exist anymore. It went bankrupt 30 years ago. You might as well frame it as a reminder of what happens when you believe in things that do not make sense. Give it back." My father looked at me with surprise. Then he shrugged and thrust the certificate at me. "Fine. Keep your worthless souvenir. But do not come to me when you find out it is not worth the paper it is printed on." I took the certificate and held it against my chest. Grandpa Arthur caught my eye from across the room. He looked sad, but not surprised. He had expected this. He had known how they would react. "It is not about the money," he said softly, so only I could hear. "It never was. It was about believing in something bigger than yourself. About seeing the future and having faith in it." He squeezed my hand. "You understand that, Duncan. You are the only one who does. I will keep it safe, Grandpa. I promise." "I know you will." That was the last Christmas we had together. Grandpa Arthur died on a Tuesday morning in March. Peacefully, in his sleep, in the same house where he had tinkered with computers and dreamed about the future for over 40 years. The neighbor found him when she came to check on him, and he did not answer the door. I was the one who identified the body. I was the one who called the funeral home. I was the one who sat in his garage, surrounded by decades of technology that no one else in the family valued, and wept for the man who had taught me more about belief and patience than anyone else I had ever known. The funeral was small. A few old colleagues from Motorola, most of them in their 80s. Some neighbors who had known him for decades. The family came, of course, though my father spent most of the service checking his phone and Kevin kept whispering to his wife about something unrelated. I delivered the eulogy because no one else would. My grandfather Arthur was an engineer, I said, standing at the podium. He spent 34 years at Motorola, helping to build the technology that transformed our world. He was there when computers filled entire rooms. He was there when the first mobile phones were invented. He watched the future being built and he believed in it. He was not a wealthy man by most standards. He did not have a big house or a fancy car. He did not retire to a golf course or travel the world. But he had something more valuable: curiosity, wonder, the belief that tomorrow could be better than today. He taught me that it is okay to dream, that it is okay to believe in things that other people do not understand, that sometimes the best investments are not the ones that pay off immediately, but the ones that represent faith in the future. I will miss him every day for the rest of my life, and I will try to carry forward his belief that technology, innovation, and human creativity can make the world a better place. My father checked his watch during my eulogy. Uncle Gregory examined his fingernails. Kevin was looking at his phone, but Melissa was crying. And our son Nathan, 3 years old and not really understanding what was happening, held my hand when I sat back down and said, "Good job, Daddy." That was enough. The reading of the will happened 4 days later, at a lawyer's office in Phoenix. My father was there, ready to collect whatever inheritance Grandpa Arthur had left behind. Uncle Gregory had extended his trip. Kevin came because my father told him to. The lawyer, an old man named Richardson who had known Grandpa Arthur for years, read the will in a quiet, respectful voice. To my son Lawrence, I leave my house at 3847 Maple Drive in Tempe, to be sold or kept as he sees fit. My father nodded. The house was worth maybe $200,000. Not much, but something. To my son Gregory, I leave my savings account at Arizona Federal Credit Union and my investment portfolio at Schwab. The combined balance is approximately $43,000. Gregory looked satisfied. That was more than he had expected. To my grandson Kevin, I leave my collection of vintage computing equipment to be donated to a museum or educational institution of his choosing. Kevin shrugged. At least he did not have to deal with the junk. To my grandson Duncan, I leave my personal journals, my technical library, and any stock certificates or financial documents found in my desk drawer, with all associated rights and claims. My father looked confused. Stock certificates? What stock certificates? The will specifies any certificates found in the deceased's desk, Richardson said calmly. He means the Pacific Digital garbage, Kevin said, laughing. Duncan already has that. Grandpa gave it to him at Christmas. Then the bequest is already fulfilled. The estate is closed. My father stood up, brushing off his jacket. Well, that was straightforward. At least we got the house. They left. All of them. My father, Gregory, Kevin. They walked out of that lawyer's office without a backward glance, already discussing how to divide the estate. I stayed behind. Richardson was watching me with an expression I could not read. "Mr. Shaw," he said after the others were gone. "Your grandfather came to see me about 2 months ago. He was very specific about leaving those stock certificates to you. They are worthless. The company went bankrupt in '92. Richardson raised an eyebrow. "Is that what your family told you?" "That is what everyone says." "Have you ever verified that yourself?" I stared at him. "What do you mean?" I mean that your grandfather never actually confirmed what happened to Pacific Digital Technologies. He assumed, based on the fact that the company stopped communicating. But assumptions are not facts. Richardson paused. If I were you, I would take that certificate to a broker. See what they can find. I looked at the stock certificate in my hands. The yellowed paper. The ornate border. The name that everyone said was worthless. Do you know something? I asked. I know that your grandfather was one of the smartest men I ever met. And I know that sometimes the things people think are worthless turn out to be worth more than anyone imagined. The next morning, I called a brokerage firm. I had never worked with a broker before. I did not have investments or portfolios or any of the things that my father and brother considered essential to being a responsible adult. I had a savings account and a pension from my union and a modest life that did not require complicated financial instruments. But I remembered what Richardson had said. I remembered the look in his eye, and I remembered Grandpa Arthur's face when he handed me that certificate at Christmas. The mixture of sadness and hope and something else I could not quite identify. So I made an appointment with a financial advisor at a firm downtown. I put on my best shirt, the same one I wore to job interviews and funerals, and I drove to the glass tower where people in expensive suits made decisions about money. The drive gave me time to think, to doubt. What if my father was right? What if the certificate really was worthless, just a piece of paper from a company that had failed 30 years ago? What if going to this broker would just confirm what everyone had been telling me all along? That Grandpa Arthur had made a mistake, that his dream had been foolish, that belief without evidence is just another word for delusion. But I kept driving, because I had promised him I would keep that certificate safe. Because something in Richardson's voice had suggested there was more to the story. Because I owed it to Grandpa Arthur to find out the truth, even if the truth was painful. The brokerage firm was in a building I had driven past 100 times without ever going inside. 20 stories of glass and steel, the kind of architecture that announces wealth and success and belonging. I felt out of place the moment I walked through the revolving door. My work boots on the marble floor. My calloused hands against the polished surfaces. Everything about me said I did not belong here. But I had an appointment, and I had a stock certificate that everyone said was worthless. The broker's name was James Worthington. He was about my age, with a firm handshake and a professional smile. His office was on the 12th floor, with a view of the Phoenix skyline that probably cost more per month than my mortgage. The furniture was expensive, the art on the walls was abstract and vaguely intimidating, and everything about the space was designed to make people like me feel small. "Mr. Shaw," he said, gesturing to a leather chair that probably cost more than my truck. "What can I help you with today? I have a stock certificate. An old one. My grandfather gave it to me before he died." I pulled the certificate from its envelope, suddenly aware of how fragile and yellowed it looked in this gleaming modern office. Everyone tells me it is worthless. But someone suggested I should verify that. Worthington took the certificate and examined it. His eyebrows rose slightly. I watched his face for any sign of recognition, any indication that he knew something I did not. Pacific Digital Technologies. I have not heard that name before. He set the certificate down carefully on his desk and turned to his computer. "Let me see what I can find." He typed the company name into some kind of database. I watched his face as he worked, looking for any sign of what he was finding. The seconds stretched into minutes. I could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of phones ringing in other offices, my own heart beating too fast in my chest. He said. Pacific Digital Technologies, Incorporated 1979, Silicon Valley. Manufactured specialized components for personal computers. He scrolled down. I am not seeing a bankruptcy filing. It went under in '92. At least that is what my family says. Let me check the corporate actions database. More typing. More scrolling. The tension in the room was building, though I could not have said why. Here we go. Pacific Digital Technologies. November 1992. He leaned closer to the screen. Acquired by Integrated Circuits Incorporated. All shares converted at a ratio of 1 to 3. Acquired? Not bankrupt. Definitely not bankrupt. It was an acquisition. He kept reading, his expression shifting from professional curiosity to something else. Something like disbelief. ICI continued operating until 1998, when it was acquired by Valley Semiconductor. Then Valley was acquired in 2005 by... He stopped. His fingers stopped moving. His face went pale. By who? He did not answer. He picked up his phone and dialed a number, speaking quietly to someone on the other end. Then he hung up and dialed another number. And another. That is when I knew something was happening. That is when the room started to feel different, charged with possibility, electric with the sense that everything was about to change. When he finally finished his calls and turned back to me, his expression had changed completely. "Mr. Shaw," he said, his voice careful and measured, "I need to verify some things. This is going to take a few minutes. Can I get you some water? Coffee? Just tell me what you found." He took a deep breath. Pacific Digital was acquired by ICI in 1992. Your grandfather's 500 shares were converted to 1,500 shares of ICI. Then ICI was acquired by Valley Semiconductor in 1998, and those shares were converted again, plus there were several stock splits in between. Then Valley was acquired in 2005. By who? NVIDIA Corporation. The name hit me like a physical force. NVIDIA, the company that made graphics cards. The company that was at the center of the artificial intelligence revolution. The company whose stock had gone from $20 to over $100 in the past few years. After all the conversions and stock splits over 40 years, Worthington continued, your grandfather's original 500 shares are now approximately 47,000 shares of NVIDIA. 47,000 shares. Yes, at the current market price of approximately $112 per share. He paused, checking his screen. The total value is approximately $5,264,000. I could not breathe. I could not think. I could not do anything except sit there, staring at the stock certificate in my hands, the worthless piece of paper that was worth $5 million. He never knew, I said, when I could finally speak. He thought he lost everything. The acquisition notices would have been sent to his address on file. But in 1992, if he believed the company had failed, he might not have been watching for them. The mail might have been thrown away, or lost, or misdelivered. It happens more often than you would think. For 30 years, he carried that guilt for 30 years, thinking he had made a terrible mistake. Worthington nodded slowly. But he did not make a mistake, Mr. Shaw. He made one of the best investments of his generation. He just did not know it. I drove home in a daze, the stock certificate on the seat beside me, my mind spinning with numbers I could not comprehend. $5 million. My grandfather, the man everyone pitied, the man everyone said had thrown away his money on a foolish dream, had accidentally created a fortune. And he died thinking he had nothing. Melissa met me at the door, worried by the look on my face. Duncan? What happened? What did the broker say? I handed her the printout Worthington had given me, the summary of corporate actions, the conversion history, the current value. She read it. Then she read it again. Then she sat down on the kitchen floor, right there on the tile, and started to cry. $5 million, she whispered. Yes, from a company everyone said went bankrupt. It did not go bankrupt. It was acquired, and acquired again, and again, until it became part of NVIDIA. And your grandfather never knew? He never knew. He died thinking he had lost everything, thinking his dream had failed. Melissa looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Your father laughed at him. Christmas. He called it worthless paper. I know. And the whole time it was worth millions. The whole time. She stood up and hugged me, holding me tight. He would have wanted you to know. He would have wanted someone to know that he was not a fool, that he was right to believe. I know. That is why I have to tell them. The confrontation with my family happened a week later. I did not plan it. I did not want it. But my father found out about the stock value the way people always find out about these things, and he demanded a meeting at his house. When I arrived, They were all there. My father pacing by the window. My mother perched on the edge of the couch. Kevin leaning against the fireplace with his arms crossed. Uncle Gregory had flown back from California, apparently deciding that $5 million was worth another trip. $5.2 million, my father said, before I even sat down. That worthless stock certificate that I laughed at on Christmas is worth $5.2 million. Yes. And my father left it all to you, the plumber. The one who never made anything of himself. The one who visited him. Yes. My father's face was red with anger. I am his son, his actual son. That certificate should have been part of the estate, divided equally among all of us. He had the right to leave his property to whoever he wanted. He chose me. Because you manipulated him. You spent 12 years manipulating a senile old man, pretending to care about his stupid computers and his failed investments, waiting for him to die so you could cash in. I did not know the stock was worth anything. Neither did he. He thought he had lost everything. He gave me that certificate because he wanted me to remember his dream, not because he thought it would make me rich. That is convenient, Kevin said. You spend years cozying up to the old man, and then it turns out his worthless investment is worth millions. And we are supposed to believe you had no idea. Believe whatever you want. It does not change the facts. The facts are that you stole our inheritance, Gregory said. That money should belong to the family. I am family. My wife and son are family. I stood up. And here is another fact. For 12 years, I visited Grandpa Arthur every single week. I listened to his stories. I learned from him. I treated him like he mattered. How many times did you visit him in those 12 years, Gregory? Twice? 3 times? And you, Dad? Once a month? Less. Silence. He knew. He knew exactly how you felt about him. He knew you thought he was a fool, a dreamer, a man who wasted his money on things he did not understand. And when he died, he left his most precious possession to the only person who ever made him feel like he was not a failure. He was a failure, my father said. He spent his whole life tinkering with computers and making bad investments. That one stock certificate is the only thing he ever got right. That one stock certificate proves he was right all along. He believed in technology. He believed in the future. He believed that computers would change the world. And he was right. I walked to the door. The difference is, he believed even when everyone told him he was wrong. Even when everyone laughed at him. Even when he thought he had lost everything. This is not over, Gregory said. We will contest the will. We will hire lawyers. Go ahead. The will is clear. The certificate was specifically bequeathed to me. And even if it had not been, I have possession of it. It has been in my hands since Christmas. I opened the door. You can waste your money on lawyers if you want, but you will not get a cent of that inheritance. Not because the law is on my side, but because Grandpa Arthur wanted it that way. I walked out. I did not look back. It has been 6 months since I learned the truth about Grandpa Arthur's investment. The shares are still there, most of them. I sold some to pay off the house and set up a college fund for Nathan. But I kept the majority, watching them grow, watching the company Grandpa Arthur never knew. He owned a piece of change the world with artificial intelligence and graphics technology and all the things he believed in back in 1983. I work with a financial advisor now, someone who understood what I wanted. Not to get rich quickly, but to honor my grandfather's patience. To hold on to something good and let it grow. The same approach he took in 1983, even if he never got to see it work out. Your grandfather was a visionary, the advisor told me at our first meeting. We were sitting in his office, surrounded by screens showing stock prices and market data, and I was still trying to understand how I had ended up here. He saw the potential of technology 40 years ago. Most people did not understand what he was doing. They still do not. He thought he lost everything. He thought wrong. And I think somehow he would be happy to know that he was right all along. That his belief was justified. That the future he imagined actually came true. We paid off our house. The modest 3-bedroom in Mesa that Melissa and I bought when Nathan was born. I thought about moving to somewhere bigger, somewhere in a better neighborhood, somewhere that would make my father jealous. But Melissa talked me out of it. We built our life here, she said. This is where Nathan took his first steps. This is where we became a family. Why would we leave just because we have money now? Money should make your life better, not turn you into a different person. She was right. She is usually right about these things. So we stayed. We just do not have a mortgage anymore, which means we do not have to worry anymore, which is worth more than any fancy address could ever be. We set up a trust for Nathan, a fund that will pay for his education, his first house, his dreams, whatever they turn out to be. I want him to have the security that my grandfather never had. The freedom to believe in things without worrying about what happens if they do not work out. And I kept some Nvidia shares in his name, so that someday when he is old enough to understand, I can tell him the story about a great-grandfather who believed in computers before anyone else, who invested in a dream that everyone said was foolish, who died thinking he had failed, but who was actually right all along. I want Nathan to know that believing in things is not foolish, that patience is not weakness, that sometimes the best things in life are the things you have to wait for. We gave some of the money away to the computer science program at the local community college, where students who cannot afford university can learn about technology the way Grandpa Arthur learned about it, through curiosity and determination and hands-on experimentation, to the public library so they can buy computers and technology books for kids who want to understand how the world works. Your grandfather would have liked that, Melissa said when I told her about the donations. Helping kids learn about computers, helping them believe in the future. I hope so. I hope he knows. But I still work. I still get up every morning and put on my work clothes and drive to job sites and fix pipes and install fixtures. I still come home tired and satisfied, with grease on my hands and the particular exhaustion that comes from solving real problems for real people. You could retire, Melissa says sometimes, watching me stretch out sore muscles at the end of a long day. You do not have to work anymore. We have enough money to last several lifetimes. I know, but I like what I do. I like helping people. I like fixing things that are broken. I smile. Besides, Grandpa Arthur worked his whole life. He never stopped learning, never stopped tinkering, never stopped believing. I want to be like him. I want to stay curious. I want to stay useful. She understands. She always understands. My father has not spoken to me since the confrontation at his house. Neither has Kevin or Gregory. My mother sends occasional texts, awkward attempts at reconciliation that never mention the money or Grandpa Arthur or the 12 years I spent visiting while the rest of them stayed away. I do not respond. I am not sure what I would say. I am not angry anymore. I am just sad. Sad that they never knew him the way I did. Sad that they spent so many years looking down on a man who deserved their respect. Sad that they will never understand what they lost. I visit Grandpa Arthur's grave every Sunday. I bring a cup of coffee, the same brand he always drank, and I sit on the grass beside his headstone and I talk to him. Sometimes Melissa comes with me. Sometimes Nathan comes too, though he is too young to fully understand why we go. This is your great-grandpa, I tell Nathan, pointing at the headstone. He loved computers. He believed in technology before anyone else. He saw the future. Was he smart? Nathan asks. He was the smartest person I ever knew, not because he had fancy degrees, but because he was curious about everything. He wanted to understand how things worked, just like you. Nathan considers this for a moment, in that serious way 4-year-olds have when they are thinking about something important. Then he reaches out and pats the headstone gently. Hi, great-grandpa. I like computers too. I have to turn away so he does not see me cry. Nathan is getting big, I tell Grandpa Arthur during my visits. He is in preschool now. He loves computers just like you did. He is always asking me how things work, always taking apart his toys to see what is inside. You would love him. Melissa says hello. She is thinking about starting a small business. A bakery, maybe. She has been talking about it for years, but now we can actually afford to try. That is because of you. Nvidia is doing amazing things. Artificial intelligence, graphics processing, all the things you believed in. Your investment is still growing, still proving that you were right. I wish you could see it. I wish you could know that you were not wrong. That your dream came true. I miss you, Grandpa. I miss our Sundays. I miss your garage full of computers and your stories about Motorola and your belief that the future was going to be amazing. I miss the way you made me feel like anything was possible. I miss the way you never gave up on your dreams, even when everyone else told you they were foolish. The wind moves through the trees. A bird sings somewhere nearby, and I like to think he can hear me. I like to think he knows. The stock certificate hangs on my wall now, framed behind glass in a place of honor in my living room. 500 shares of Pacific Digital Technologies. April 15, 1983. Arthur Raymond Shaw. I see it every morning when I wake up and every night before I go to sleep. The yellowed paper, the ornate border, the faded printing that represents 40 years of patience, 40 years of believing in something the world said was worthless, 40 years of waiting for a future that finally arrived. It is not worthless paper. It never was. It was a dream, preserved on yellowed paper, waiting for someone to believe in it. And now that dream belongs to me. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Before you go, I have left 2 more stories here on your screen. Both from men who discovered that family is not always who you are born to. It is who stands by you when the truth comes out. Click on whichever one calls to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be the outsider looking in, that notification bell is your invitation. Until tomorrow, remember, your story matters, even if they tried to erase it.